Your grandfather didn't take supplements. He didn't count macros. He didn't spend a single hour inside a gym. But somewhere in an old photograph, you can see it in how he stood. Straight, solid, like a man whose body hadn't given up on him yet. The question keeping you up at night isn't what pill he didn't take, it's what he ate. Because the men and women of the ancient world, the ones who worked from sunup to sundown, who survived famine and still lived with a vitality that modern medicine can barely explain, they ate from a table that God Himself described, and most of us have completely forgotten what was on it. If this is something you have never heard before, make sure you are subscribed and hit the like button right now, because what comes next is the part most people never get to see. There is a quiet crisis happening in the bodies of people over 50 that nobody wants to talk about plainly. Not the doctors, not the pharmaceutical companies, and certainly not the food industry that profits from your confusion. It is the slow, steady loss of muscle and structural strength that begins in your mid-40s and accelerates with every decade unless something interrupts it. You feel it in ways that sneak up on you. The stairs that used to be nothing. The jar lid that suddenly requires more than it should. The morning that takes longer than it once did to fully arrive inside your body. These are not just signs of age. They are signs of a body that is not receiving what it was designed to receive. God did not design the human body to fall apart at 50. That is not in the blueprint. What is in the blueprint? Written across thousands of years of biblical agriculture, ancient pastoral life, and the specific foods described in Scripture, is a pattern of nourishment that modern dietitians are only now beginning to rediscover. The men in the lineage of Abraham were shepherds, farmers, fishermen, and builders. They had access to specific proteins that rebuilt tissue, maintained strength, supported the bones, and kept the mind clear. Not because they went looking for superfoods, but because those foods were simply what God placed in the land He gave them. This is not a video about dieting. It is not about restriction or counting or measuring. It is about restoration, about returning to the table that was always meant for you, about giving your body, especially a body that is over 50 and carrying decades of modern food confusion, the raw material it was originally designed to work with. These 10 biblical proteins are not exotic. They are not expensive. Most of them are available at any grocery store, some at any farmer's market, and a few you may already have in your kitchen right now. What has changed is whether you understand why they matter. After today, you will. The first protein on this list is one that built the strength of empires and sustained the faith of prophets. It is lamb. Not the frozen, shrink-wrapped, flavor-stripped version you sometimes find at a discount grocery store, but real lamb, the kind raised on open pasture, the kind whose fat carries something the body actually knows how to use. In the Old Testament, lamb was not just food. It was sacred. It was the animal of covenant, the animal of Passover, was the animal placed on the altar as a symbol of something holy. And when you understand that biblical context, you begin to see why this protein was given such a central place in the lives of the people God was building into a nation. Lamb is one of the most complete proteins available in the natural world. A single serving carries every essential amino acid the body needs to repair and rebuild tissue, and it carries them in proportions that are remarkably close to what the human body actually uses. For someone over 50 whose muscles have begun the slow process of breaking down faster than they rebuild, this matters enormously. The body at this stage of life needs not just protein in general, but specific amino acids, particularly leucine, which is the trigger that tells muscle tissue to begin the rebuilding process. Lamb is generous with leucine. It is also rich in zinc, in iron, and in the B vitamins that support energy at the cellular level. When you sit down to a plate of slow-roasted lamb, seasoned simply with salt and herbs the way it would have been prepared in a biblical household, you are giving your body a message it was designed to receive from the very beginning. There is also something in the fat of pasture-raised lamb that deserves to be said plainly. It is not the enemy of your heart that the food pyramid of the last century told you it was. The fat in well-raised lamb contains conjugated linoleic acid and specific saturated fats that the body uses to maintain cell membrane integrity, to support hormone production, and to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins your body cannot use without it. Your grandparents knew this. They did not overthink the lamb chop. They simply ate it, gave thanks, and went on living strong. The second biblical protein is fish, specifically the fish of the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean coastal waters, the fish that Jesus prepared for his disciples on the shores of a lake at dawn, the fish that fed thousands alongside bread on a hillside in the Galilee region. Fish is woven through the entire narrative of the New Testament in a way that is impossible to ignore if you are paying attention. And the fish of that region and that era were not farmed in crowded pens. They were wild, cold water fish, swimming in mineral-rich, ancient waters, and eating what God placed in those waters for them to eat. Wild fish, particularly the smaller, fattier varieties like sardines, mackerel, and herring, which would have been common preserved fish in the biblical world, are extraordinary protein sources precisely because they are not just protein. They carry long-chain fatty acids that the brain and the nervous system depend on to function clearly. For someone over 50 whose neurological health is beginning to face the pressures of time, this combination of complete protein and brain-supporting fat is something that no synthetic supplement has ever fully replicated. The body was made to receive these nutrients together, wrapped in the same whole food, because that is how God packaged them. Eating wild fish several times a week gives your body the amino acids it needs for structural repair and gives your mind the raw material it needs to stay sharp and present. There is also the matter of inflammation, which is the hidden engine beneath most of the physical decline that people over 50 attribute simply to age. The omega-3 fatty acids in wild fish are among the most powerful natural supporters of the body's own regulatory systems. They do not fight inflammation with the brute force of a pharmaceutical. They restore the body's ability to regulate itself the way it was designed to do before decades of processed food and vegetable oils disrupted that system entirely. Eat the fish. Eat it the way it was eaten in Galilee, simply, with gratitude, and let your body remember what it was made for. The third protein is eggs. Not the pale, watery eggs that come from caged hens raised in windowless warehouses, but real eggs, the kind laid by hens that walk in sunlight, eat grasses and insects, and live the way a hen was designed to live. In the ancient Near East, eggs were a household staple. Every family with animals had access to them. They were not feared. They were not rationed. They were eaten with the confidence of people who understood that God does not place poisonous things at the center of the food supply He designs for His people. The egg is arguably the most perfect single protein package in the natural world. Every essential amino acid is present. The yolk, which was wrongly demonized for decades by nutritional science that has since corrected itself, carries fat-soluble vitamins including A, D, E, and K2. Along with choline, which is a nutrient that supports both liver function and the integrity of every cell membrane in the body. For someone over 50, choline becomes especially significant because it supports the neurological pathways that govern memory, coordination, and cognitive clarity. When you eat a pastured egg, you are not just eating protein. You are giving your nervous system one of the most bioavailable forms of brain-supporting nutrition that exists in the natural food supply. Eggs also carry something called glycine, an amino acid that supports the body's ability to build and maintain connective tissue. Glycine is part of the architecture of tendons, ligaments, and the cartilage that cushions your joints. As the body ages, glycine becomes harder to produce in sufficient quantities on its own. The eggs your great-grandmother ate every morning without a second thought were quietly keeping her connective tissue resilient in ways she never needed to understand scientifically because her body simply knew what to do with what she gave it. The fourth protein is lentils. Yes, lentils, the very food that Esau sold his birthright to receive. If that story from Genesis always struck you as strange, that a man would surrender his inheritance for a bowl of something, consider that what Esau was asking for was not a bowl of instant noodles. He was asking for a rich, slow-cooked stew of red lentils that carried a depth of nourishment that his exhausted body was crying out for. People who have never been truly depleted sometimes underestimate how specific the body's hunger can be. Esau was not just hungry. He was drawn to something his body recognized as restorative. Lentils are one of the most protein-dense plant foods that exists, and they have been a cornerstone of the biblical diet across both testaments. A single cup of cooked lentils carries roughly 18 grams of protein along with a fiber content that supports digestive health, regulates the pace at which sugar enters the bloodstream, and feeds the beneficial microorganisms that make up the gut's own ecosystem. The gut is not just a digestive organ, it is in continuous conversation with every other system in the body, including the immune system and the brain. When you support the gut with the kind of slow-burning, fiber-rich protein that lentils provide, you are supporting far more than digestion. For people over 50 who are navigating the metabolic shifts that come with age, lentils offer something particularly valuable. They are protein that does not spike your energy and then crash it. They are nourishment that enters slowly, sustains steadily, and leaves the body feeling settled rather than taxed. This is the ancient wisdom of pulse foods, the foods that Daniel chose in the palace of Babylon when he refused the king's rich fare and came out looking healthier than everyone around him after just 10 days. There is a reason that story is in the book. Pay attention to what he ate. The fifth protein is goat. This may be the most overlooked protein in modern American kitchens, and that is a direct result of how far we have drifted from the agricultural traditions of the biblical world. Goats were everywhere in Scripture. They were currency. They were offerings. They were the livestock of ordinary families across the entire ancient Near East. When the prodigal son's older brother complained that his father had never given him even a young goat to celebrate with his friends, he was pointing to goat meat as the symbol of festivity, of abundance, of something worth marking an occasion with. Goat meat is leaner than beef while still carrying a rich, complete amino acid profile. It is lower in total fat than most other red meats, but the fat it does carry is structured in a way the body processes efficiently. It is also higher in iron than chicken and carries a meaningful concentration of potassium, which supports healthy muscle contraction and cardiovascular function. For someone over 50 who wants the rebuilding power of red meat without the heaviness that can come with it, goat is the answer that the ancient world took for granted. It is now gaining attention among nutritionists as one of the most heart-friendly red meats available, which would come as no surprise to any shepherd from the time of Abraham. Which one of these has been a part of your family table for generations? Maybe it was lentil stew on cold winter nights, or your grandmother's way with lamb on Sundays, or eggs from the backyard flock your grandfather kept. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and those stories matter more than you might think. The sixth protein is raw honey combined with nuts, particularly almonds and walnuts, which were among the most commonly referenced food provisions in the biblical record. When Jacob sent his sons to Egypt with gifts for the governor, they did not yet know was their brother Joseph. He sent almonds and honey among the provisions, recognizing them as things of genuine value. Almonds are a dense protein source that also carry healthy fats, magnesium, and vitamin E, which is one of the body's most important defenders against oxidative stress. Walnuts carry a plant-based form of the same omega-3 fatty acids found in cold water fish, along with a unique antioxidant profile that supports the brain and the cardiovascular system, combined with a small amount of raw, unfiltered honey, which was not the pasteurized, stripped, shelf-stable liquid of the modern supermarket, but a living food full of enzymes and trace compounds. These two protein sources create a snack that the ancient world understood instinctively. Honey, in its raw form, supports digestive enzyme activity, helps the body absorb minerals, and carries its own modest protein content in the form of trace amino acids. It was also the food that John the Baptist sustained himself on in the wilderness, combined with locusts, which are actually a legitimate protein source in their own right, and are still eaten across parts of the ancient world today. The point is that raw honey was not a treat. It was a functional food that the people of Scripture ate with intention. For someone over 50, this combination of nuts and raw honey addresses something specific. It provides a gentle, sustained protein and fat combination that the body can draw on between meals without spiking cortisol or creating the energy crashes that come from reaching for something processed. The magnesium in almonds is particularly worth mentioning because magnesium deficiency is one of the most widespread and least discussed nutritional gaps in adults over 50, and it contributes directly to muscle cramping, disrupted sleep, low energy, and poor stress recovery. A handful of almonds and walnuts with a small drizzle of raw honey is not a snack. It is biblical medicine in its most accessible form. The seventh protein is dried and salted fish. This deserves its own entry separate from fresh fish because the preparation method itself produces something nutritionally distinct. In the ancient world, fish that could not be eaten fresh was preserved through salting and drying, a process that concentrates its protein content significantly while also producing fermentation-related compounds that support gut health. The dried fish of the biblical world would have resembled modern salt cod or the small dried sardines still eaten across Mediterranean cultures today. When fish is dried and lightly fermented through the salting process, the protein becomes even more concentrated, and the amino acids become more bioavailable because the fermentation process essentially pre-digests some of the protein matrix. This is not a small thing. As the digestive system ages and the body's own production of stomach acid and digestive enzymes decreases, bioavailability becomes a critical factor in how much nutrition the body actually extracts from what you eat. You can eat a technically nutritious meal and absorb far less than you think if your digestive environment is not up to the task. Fermented and preserved animal proteins were a natural solution to this problem long before anyone understood the science, because God designed the preservation methods available to ancient people in ways that supported exactly the nutritional needs those people had. Dried and salted fish is also extraordinarily rich in calcium, particularly when eaten with the small bones intact, which was standard practice in the ancient world and is still common in many traditional cultures that have lower rates of bone density loss than the modern American average. The calcium in fish bones is highly bioavailable and carries phosphorus alongside it in natural proportions that the body uses for both bone maintenance and cellular energy production. Your bones are not just structural. They are metabolically active tissue that is in constant communication with your muscles, your hormones, and your immune system. Feed them what they were designed to receive. The eighth protein is quail. This may seem obscure until you remember that it appears in one of the most dramatic food provision stories in all of Scripture. When the Israelites were in the desert and crying out for meat, God sent quail, not once but twice. In both Exodus and Numbers, God provided this specific bird as the answer to a specific physical need. Quail is a small, remarkably protein-dense bird whose meat is lean, tender, and rich in the B vitamins, particularly B12 and B6, that support energy metabolism, neurological health, and the production of red blood cells. Quail eggs, which are available at many specialty grocers and some farmers' markets, are actually even more nutritionally concentrated than chicken eggs. They carry a higher ratio of protein to total mass, a richer concentration of iron, and a notably high level of vitamin B12 in a form the body absorbs readily. For someone over 50 who is experiencing the energy decline, the foggy thinking, or the subtle fatigue that can come from B12 depletion, which is more common after 50 than most people realize because stomach acid production decreases and B12 requires stomach acid to be properly absorbed, quail and quail eggs are a direct answer. They are a food God literally sent from the sky to sustain His people in a season of physical hardship. That fact carries weight if you are willing to sit with it. Quail prepared simply, roasted or braised with herbs and a small amount of olive oil, produces a meal that is both deeply satisfying and extraordinarily nourishing. It is a protein that the body recognizes not as fuel to be processed and discarded, but as a complete nutritional event, something that meets the body at multiple levels at once and leaves every system it touches better supported than it was before. The ninth protein is raw and cultured dairy, specifically the kind described throughout Scripture as milk and its fermented forms. The land flowing with milk and honey was not a metaphor in its entirety. It described an agricultural reality of a region where well-tended flocks of goats and sheep produced milk that sustained families across generations. And that milk, in the ancient world, was not pasteurized, not homogenized, not stripped of its fat and its enzymes and its living bacterial cultures. It was real milk from real animals, often allowed to culture naturally into forms resembling what we today would call yogurt or kefir. Cultured dairy, particularly when made from full-fat goat or sheep milk, is one of the most complete protein sources available in the human food supply. It carries whey protein and casein protein together in their natural ratios, along with the complete array of fat-soluble vitamins, the minerals calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium, and the living cultures of beneficial bacteria that support the digestive environment. For someone over 50 whose muscle tissue is in need of constant rebuilding signals, the leucine content of whey protein is particularly significant because leucine is the primary amino acid that triggers muscle protein synthesis, the process by which the body decides to build rather than break down. Abraham served the 3 visitors who appeared at his tent not just meat, but milk and butter as well, and he served it with urgency and generosity, running to prepare it as quickly as he could. There is something instructive in that image. The milk of the biblical world was not an afterthought. It was an honored food, offered to honored guests, treated as something precious. What we have done to dairy in the modern era, stripping it, modifying it, making it fear-inducing through decades of nutritional mythology, is a loss that the body has paid for in ways that only now are being honestly reckoned with. The 10th and final protein on this list is the one most likely to surprise you, and it is also the one with perhaps the deepest roots in both the physical and spiritual history of God's people. It is bone broth, not a commercially prepared powder, not a flavored cube. Real bone broth made by simmering the bones and connective tissue of animals, the parts that every traditional culture in history, including the Israelites, would have used completely and without waste, in water with a splash of something acidic for many hours until the minerals and the gelatin and the collagen precursors have fully dissolved into the liquid. Bone broth is not technically just a protein source, but it is one of the richest sources of the specific amino acids that the body uses to build and maintain connective tissue, that is to say, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, the lining of the gut, and the matrix of the bones themselves. Glycine. Proline and hydroxyproline are the structural amino acids of collagen, and they are found in abundance in properly made bone broth and in almost no other common food in the modern diet. This is not coincidental. The traditional practice of using the whole animal, of simmering bones into a restorative liquid, was present in essentially every food culture on Earth for thousands of years because it worked, because bodies responded to it, because the people who drank it regularly maintained a structural integrity that we have lost in a culture that throws the bones away and eats only the muscle meat. For someone over 50 whose joints have begun to signal their displeasure, whose skin has begun to lose the resilience it once had, whose gut lining has been quietly damaged by decades of modern food. Bone broth is one of the most direct forms of nourishment that exists. It requires no digestion in the usual sense because the proteins are already partially broken down by the long cooking process. It goes almost directly into the bloodstream and sets to work. Your grandmother knew this. She made stock on the back of the stove, and nothing in her kitchen was wasted. She did not call it a health practice. She called it cooking. And she was right. This is the table that was always waiting for you. 10 proteins, each one rooted in a world where food and faith and the design of the human body were understood to be part of the same story. The men and women of Scripture did not separate what they ate from who they believed God to be. They understood, in the way that people understand things when they are close to the earth and close to their Creator, that the body is not an inconvenience to be managed but a temple to be nourished, that the food God placed in the land was placed there with intention, that nothing in His creation was accidental, including the specific proteins that the human body requires after 50 to stay strong, clear-minded, resilient, and alive to the fullness of whatever years remain. You are not designed to fade. You were not designed to spend the second half of your life managing decline and apologizing for your body's weakness. You were designed with extraordinary care and specificity to inhabit your physical form with dignity and strength for as long as God gives you breath to do so. The rebuilding you are looking for does not begin in a pharmacy. It begins at the table. It begins with the decision to eat the way your body was made to be fed, with the foods that have sustained the faithful for thousands of years, with the proteins that God built into the original design. Start with just one item from this list that you can add to your table this week. Let your body begin to remember what it always knew. Give it 30 days of this kind of nourishment, 30 days of eating from the biblical table rather than the modern one, and pay attention to what happens. not because someone promised you a cure, but because God promised you a body fearfully and wonderfully made, and that promise was never meant to have an expiration date. If this spoke to something you already knew in your spirit, subscribe to this channel and leave a like before you go. There is more coming that you will not want to miss, and the next one may be the most important thing you hear all year.